Over the last 15 years, Fender has done something that none of their competitors would. They made a strategic choice to invest not only in session musicians and create signature instruments around them, artists that were instrumental in the creation of popular music, but very much behind the scenes. Artists like Michael Landau, Pino Palladino, Sean Hurley among them. And also to identify artists that were on the come up and offer them signature instruments. Artists such as Corey Wong and Her, Tyler Bryant, all of these artists subsequently have all broken through and have reached levels of stardom that are fairly unprecedented, especially in the guitar world. However, there's an artist that fits both of the aforementioned criteria. Somebody who is a session musician that was instrumental behind the scenes of many huge hits by bands such as Steely Dan, Pink Floyd, the Pointer Sisters, the Bee Gees, the Brothers Johnson, George Benson, and who also is a Grammy-winning solo artist. And one of his most recorded instruments was a 1958 Fender Stratocaster that was heavily modified and has a story that is ripe for a signature instrument. And not only am I going to tell you the story of this guitar and how it came to be, but I'm also going to build an exact replica using a Fender Custom Shop guitar from that same generation, presumably the same way that Fender might prototype such an instrument by taking a guitar from off the wall of the Custom Shop and then adapting it to exactly the way that the artist might have used it before actually going into production. And this is my case to you, the viewer, and to Fender if you're listening, as to why there should be a Fender Custom Shop 1958 Stratocaster Lee Ritenour signature guitar. To understand the story of this guitar, we first need to know who is Lee Ritenour. Lee Ritenour is an American guitarist. He primarily focused his work in jazz guitar and studied it at USC in Southern California. However, it wasn't long after Lee enrolled in college that he became one of the first call and most in-demand session guitarists in all of LA.
How many sessions have you played on in a given period of time? What's the big number?
For a while when I was working, I did sessions every week, three a day for 5 years. And one time I had a contest with another buddy, and I did 26 in 5 days. Yes, in about 3 years, 2,000 sessions, so I'm lucky I'm alive.
By the late 70s, Lee wanted to discontinue being a session musician and wanted to completely focus on his solo jazz career and really develop himself as an artist. And eventually he broke off, was nominated for dozens of Grammys, and in fact even won a Grammy for his work as a jazz guitarist. The history of Lee Ritenour's 1958 Stratocaster. The guitar has an unknown date of purchase, but is presumed to have been bought sometime in the mid to late 70s. We do know that the guitar was heavily modified over a period of 5 years by Mike McGuire, the head builder and luthier at Valley Arts Guitars, which was a guitar shop and guitar manufacturer based in Los Angeles, California. Now, not only would Mike work with players such as the great Lee Ritenour, but would also work with Larry Carlton, Tim May, Dean Parks, Paul Jackson Jr., among them. The guitar was progressively modified from the early 80s to roughly 1987, and we can see examples of this through live footage of Lee using the guitar. We start first in 1984. We see Lee at the Concord Pavilion in Concord, California, where the guitar only has minimal modifications at this point. It appears to have a 3-ply pickguard instead of the standard single-ply pickguard, It appears to have the Alembic Stratoblaster boost circuit built into it. You can tell that by looking at the jack plate on the output jack of the guitar, and that's clearly been modified from the original. It also appears that there was an added string tree. Otherwise, it appears that the guitar is stock. Next, in 1986, we see a show live in Japan. In here, we can see that it still looks the same as it did in 84. So presumably those 2 years, there weren't any significant modifications. Next, in 1987, we see that the guitar has gone through another round of modifications with the added Floyd Rose tremolo system, locking nut, new tuners, and EMG S pickups. Now, this was quite a departure from its original format, but again, this was very common during that time that many session musicians that were using these instruments as sort of utility guitars would often make these what were thought to be improvements to make the tuning more stable, to lower the noise by having noiseless pickups, and having onboard boost so that they could very easily increase the volume for a lead if that was called for in a live performance or in the studio. Throughout the time that Lee had the instrument, it was used on hundreds, if not thousands, of sessions in several hits, including the Pointer Sisters' I'm So Excited, and also likely on the Saturday Night Fever soundtrack and many of those Bee Gees songs that Lee Ritenour was involved with. However, in 2018, in the Malibu fires in that time, the guitar perished, Lee's house burned down, and with it, this iconic instrument never to be seen again. To understand the Lee Ritenour Stratocaster, we first need to understand the specs. In my hands is the proposed signature Lee Ritenour 58 Strat. Now, this started its life as a Ancho Poblano mid-50s Stratocaster, but was heavily modified to match Lee's as closely as possible using contemporary parts. So a few things to mention about what's going on here. We have a maple neck, single piece. This has a little bit of quarter sawn to it. Lee's appeared to be just plain rock maple. This has medium jumbo frets, a 9.5-inch radius. Lee's presumably would have been a 7.25 radius, and likely vintage frets, although in some of the photos and video, it looks like he potentially might have had medium jumbos on there a little bit later on into the late 80s and early 90s. We're using contemporary EMG SA pickups. That's the closest that we could find in a currently made version of an EMG, whereas Lee's just had the standard S version. We also have an Alembic Stratoblaster. Now, Lee's did not have this toggle switch. His boost was always built in. So in the current version that we have here, you can bypass and just make it like a normal guitar without any boost, or as normal as this would be compared to a normal Strat. And then you can engage the boost for, I think, up to 20 dB of boost. And there's a little trim pot in there that you can use to designate how much boost you want when you engage the toggle switch. Lee's did not have that. The boost was always engaged. We also have a Floyd Rose tremolo system and locking nut. That is exactly the same as what Lee would have used. We added in the string tree so that we have the additional string tree in addition to the original one, just as Lee did. Now, this is sort of irrelevant now that there's the locking nut, but again, just for the purposes of authenticity, we're keeping those elements the same. We have the 3-ply pick guard instead of the single ply that would have been, consistent with the guitar from this era. It is an alder body, 2-color sunburst. It does have the upgraded tuners, or at least upgraded for that time. These tuners came off of an Ibanez signature Lee Ritenour guitar. He had a signature guitar with Ibanez at some point during the 80s. These tuners were certainly upgrades at the time, or thought to be at least, compared to the original Clousons, although again, with the locking nut, it probably didn't matter much. But as you can see, it was a hard find for us to be able to locate these exact hexagonal style backings on these tuners in the right style tuning keys and getting these all in one shot. It took several months just to get that single component. I'm not sure if in the custom shop version, if they were ever to do this, that they would go to that length to do it, but potentially. But we did actually find them. It's got a pretty thin C-shaped neck that was brought down slightly and just worn slightly more to give it a little bit faster finish, as you would have seen in most of the instruments kind of back in the 80s. A lot of people wanted those really fast necks that weren't sticky, weren't going to get hung up on them at all, and we're doing that here to match it as well. And then the battery compartment is one thing that we weren't sure about. Ordinarily, in a lot of the old guitars, you would actually see them routed out more along this side next to the spring. This was actually done before getting clearance on where to put it, but it was kind of too late, and so this is where it ended up. I don't know that that's how it was on Lee's. I've never been able to get anybody to confirm, even with talking to Lee and his techs, remembering exactly where this was. I think that that may be something that would need to be moved if this ever went in to be a production guitar. I would guess it was probably more over here. You'd also see a lot of them in that area that would be underneath the pick guard or would be underneath the jack plate, like Dan Huff, for example, was like that. So to Fender and the viewers of this video, I hope that this was a compelling reason to consider adding this to the roster of incredible artists that have Fender signature guitars. Lee not only is a proven entity in the session world, playing on thousands of sessions and countless hit recordings, in addition to being an incredible and Grammy-winning jazz guitarist in his own right, he seems to meet or exceed the criteria that Fender seemingly uses to identify such players that are going to be part of their signature artist program. And I think the story becomes even more compelling by way of the fact that the guitar perished in the Malibu fires of 2018, and there isn't an example of this instrument anymore in the world, and yet it has such a storied history and incredible examples of use cases where we have heard it time and again, year over year, on so many of these iconic recordings. If you like this video, I hope that you'll subscribe. I hope you'll leave a comment and tell me what you think about this instrument. And if you want to support what I'm doing, my company is called Vertex Effects. I manufacture guitar pedals, and you can find them at many of the big retailers, including Sweetwater, Amazon, Reverb, etc. We also offer paid services through Patreon and School. I also offer a masterclass about pedals and how to arrange them in the proper order. We have one right now about signal paths and effect pedal order and how to maximize your tone by way of the order of your pedals. If you're interested in that, I have that available on Teachable, and it will be linked in the description below. Thank you so much for watching. Again, I am Mason Marangella, and we'll see you on the next one.